A golden rule of politics is that victory goes to the one who widens the tent, who reaches out to as many voters as possible to win. That's exactly what the Democratic ticket of Vice President Harris and Governor Tim Walz are trying to do in their efforts to win over moderate Republican voters. There's even a group called Republicans for Harris. On Wednesday, more than 100 Republicans attended a Harris campaign event in one of the swingiest places on the political map, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. But some Republican cum MAGA leaders are bent out of shape about it. Folks like Senator Lindsey Graham, who lost it earlier today on this very set on Meet the Press when talking about Republicans for Harris.
What the hell are you doing? You're supporting the most radical nominee in the history of American politics. You're trying to convince me that Donald Trump's rhetoric is the danger to this country. The danger to this country is the policies of Biden and Harris. Her fingerprints are all over this disaster. What the hell are you doing as a Republican blessing this stuff?
It's called patriotism, Senator. Joining me now, Democratic strategist and former Obama campaign advisor Amisha Cross, and former Republican Congressman Joe Walsh. He is the director of the Social Contract and a member of Republicans for Harris. Amisha, Joe, thank you both very much for coming to the Sunday Show. So, what the hell are you doing, Joe?
I'm smiling. Oh, my God, Jonathan, that clip, what Lindsey Graham said today makes me smile because look how pissed off he is. That tells me he knows we're making a difference. Look, you've heard me say this before. I've been in every battleground state. I just got back from Arizona this weekend. I'm talking to Republicans on the ground. So many of them are voting for Kamala Harris. I don't think the polls are picking it up. Lindsey Graham knows that. This is going to make a difference. And they're nervous about it.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Amisha?
Well, I think that he was running scared. I believe what Congressman Walsh said just a moment ago. At the end of the day, this is also the same senator who was ducking, dodging, and hiding on January 6th. So to be that guy who was trying to call any savior that was necessary, and to acknowledge that Donald Trump's rhetoric was what led us there. Him lying about the election results, him telling people to assemble, him saying that we're going to take our country back, him saying all of these things has created, I think, a very dangerous place for the Republican Party, which they refused to, for whatever reason, step away from. And for Lindsey Graham, the most dangerous person we've seen in the White House has been someone who not only led an insurrection, but also someone who did not want the peaceful transfer of power, who did everything in his process to ensure that it didn't happen, someone who did not try to call down the dogs when his own sitting vice president was having his life threatened with gallows outside the Capitol. That is a threat to our democracy.
And Jonathan, of all of my former Republican colleagues who sold their soul to Trump, Lindsey may be the most pathetic. He said 6 years ago Trump would ruin this country and ruin the Republican Party. I wish John McCain could come back for just one day. He'd slap Lindsey Graham upside the head constantly.
Oh, you think? Well, if that first soundbite wouldn't do it, this one will. Watch this. Lindsey Graham talking about enemies from within.
We do have enemies within. We've got an Afghan national is going to attack us on Election Day. But when you talk about rhetoric, you got to remember they tried to blow his head off. There's one candidate in this race who's been shot at and hit in the ear, and we're lucky they didn't blow his head off. And another guy tried to kill him the next week. So I'm not overly impressed about the rhetoric game here.
Who's the they, Amisha?
The day he was applying was Democrats. And I'm so glad that the host, your lovely colleague, called him out on it for clarification, but also that there's an ongoing investigation. There's nothing to showcase that either attempted assassin had anything to do with the longstanding Democratic Party or was a part of Democratic groups. I think it's very important that we acknowledge that the right, Donald Trump, as well as his running mate, J.D. Vance, have tried to make it seem as though Democrats are the ones who are perpetuating this violence. When we know that Donald Trump has said on the campaign trail some of the wildest things when it comes to saying that, immigrants, specifically Haitian immigrants, are eating people's pets. When he is posting things on Truth Social of random Latino men and saying that this is going to happen, this is going to come to a city near you when Kamala Harris takes over housing policy, trying to scare the hell out of white suburban women. This is a guy who has run on racism. This is a guy who's run on xenophobia. This is a guy who is, running on some of the darkest parts of American history, and he's making it all bubble up, yet he throws a rock and hides his hand every time. Any bit of chaos, bedlam as he calls it, and mayhem, he's creating.
And it's all leading to violence. Laura Trump, said 2 weeks ago that if you don't vote for Donald Trump, you're evil. This is all leading to violence. It's scary.
I think you just talked about, did you just talk about J.D. Vance? Yeah, let's play J.D. Vance because this was on Wednesday and at a rally in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, where he said this about whether or not he believes Donald Trump actually lost the 2020 election.
On the election of 2020, I've answered this question directly a million times. No. I think there are serious problems in 2020. So did Donald Trump lose the election? Not by the words that I would use.
I mean, Joe, basically just setting it up for 2024, doing the same thing.
That's
again.
Disqualifying. But yeah, Jonathan, the whole thing is to do what they did in 2020. If he loses, they don't want his voters to support it. They will not support it. Trump and Vance want unrest, chaos, and violence, and that's what we're going to get.
Are you? Whoa! Are you as that?
I am. I don't think that there should be a sliver of believing in this will go any other way. There will not be a peaceful transfer for a guy who does not believe in an office that he can not only win. This is a guy who is literally running as an authoritarian. He doesn't believe that he should ever be unseated, and that the people's voice and the people's choice does not matter. So I think that we have to take it seriously when he's telling his people to arm up, when he's telling his people to pay attention to this, when he's telling his people that the voting machines were fraudulent, all of these things that he said 4 years ago that every court, including the ones with Trump-appointed judges, have found to be ignorant and false, he keeps it going.
J.D. Vance just said last week, Jonathan, you said it, you played it. Trump did not lose in 2020.
And
he said it.
He said it, and that tells us everything we need to know about the next 16 days.